I want to talk about one of my favorite demographic groups to drive. I've already mentioned in one of my other videos, I had a lot of laughs with a visually impaired woman who thought my hair was a squirrel. Now, my blind and visually impaired passengers are just wonderful folks to drive. And there's one really kind of surprising thing about them. My blind passengers tend to come in pairs. And more often than not, those pairs of blind people are related. I had one group that was husband and wife. I had a brother and sister. And I had a mother and son, and we're going to get to them shortly. I've only had one regular blind passenger who came solo. It's a wonderful woman I pick up at a local apartment complex, and I take her to a church. I don't know if she's going to events there or volunteering. I actually have not asked her. But she underscores one of the interesting things about being a rideshare driver when you have blind passengers. You have to be ready to do a little extra, basically. And that's because when your passengers are coming to the car or leaving the car, sometimes they need a little extra guidance. I mean, obviously they can't see where the car is sitting easily. My car is a hybrid, and that makes it even more of a challenge because when my car is stopped, the car is silent. The blind passengers can't hear the engine and kind of know where the car is sitting. So I know when I see a blind passenger, when I see, the cane, I roll down the window and I'll guide them towards the car. I'll tell them, straight ahead, a little to your right, a little to your left, and that helps them get to the car. And they're quite thankful for that extra guidance. Now let's get back to that mother and son. They were a hoot and a half, as I like to say. I picked up the son at one of the suburbs just a little north of here, and he had a service dog with him. So he and the dog got in the car. And I noticed they had a stop along the way. He said, we're going to pick up my mother and we're going to lunch. So we get to the apartment complex where his mother lives. Her building is on a road that has 2 or 3 identical buildings next to each other. But I pull up in front of the one that's the proper address. He gets out of the car and he goes in. He comes out, a minute or two later, and he says, I think we're at the wrong building. I said, no, I'm right in front of the numbers on the building that show we're at the right address. And he says, well, I went in and at my mother's apartment door, there's a welcome mat. And he said, I could feel there's no welcome mat in front of the door. So about this time, one of the apartment complex workers came by in a golf cart. And he stopped and he asked him if he was there to pick up his mom. He apparently knew my passenger. And he said, yeah, but I think we're at the wrong building. Her welcome mat isn't there. I can't feel a welcome mat in front of the door. And the apartment worker says, oh, yeah, your mother took her welcome mat inside to wash it. You're at the right building. So my passenger went back in, got his mother. They came out and we started along our way. And not before I teased his mom a little bit. I said, you're really pranking your son here. I don't know if that's entirely a nice thing to do. So we went along the way to where they were having lunch, and that's where the real humor came in. I stopped in front of the restaurant, and they got out, and I helped guide them in. But before I helped them in, I looked at the name of the restaurant, which I had seen in the app before we got there, but I kind of held off until we got there. I said, do you guys see any humor at all, pardon the pun, do you see any humor at all in the fact I'm taking 2 blind people to first watch? And they laughed a little and said, you're probably going to be really surprised to hear this, but no, we actually hadn't thought of that before, but yeah, that's pretty funny. They were just a wonderful, wonderful pair of people to drive. One of the other pairs of blind people I've driven, oddly, they were not related. Most of the blind people I drive, as I say, are related. These 2 were not. They just live in the same apartment building together, and that's where I picked them up. So on their first ride I took with them, they found out I worked in radio because they commented that I have a voice that sounds like I would be good for radio. And I said I worked for 3.5 years at an oldies radio station. And this is where the weirdness came in. There was a particular phrase that they just wanted to hear me say, and it's the name of a band. They just were not going to be happy until I said the Monkees, which I thought was a little weird, but I humored them and they were just delighted when I said the Monkees. So I was taking them to a shoe store that time. And that would come back in the second ride. The second time, because I didn't think to be this witty at the end of the first ride. But when I picked them up the second time, I said, I took you to a shoe store last time, and I'm just really curious. When you go into a shoe store, do you two say to the salesperson, well, we need this specific size, but we're blind, so we have no interest in how they look. We just really don't care. They thought that was delightful. They were just like, no, we never did that, but we're going to use that from now on. They were so much fun to drive, and just, I won't say in the event they're watching, given that they're visually impaired, but in the event those two wonderful ladies are listening, this is just for you, the Monkees. I'd appreciate it if you'd click on that little wheel and subscribe, and thanks for listening or watching, depending on your ability.